With that, Harold, we're going to go to one more song by Brain Control, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Harold about a special project that he's working on. Very important project, like he said. A lot of times he takes up causes, and we're going to hear a very important cause and a project that he's working on that actually involves everyone in the community. With that, Harold, we'll be right back. VOP Freedom Radio, Brain Control. And we're back at VOP Freedom Radio, alternatives to a healthier lifestyle, every Saturday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And, of course, we have our special guest on today, who's Harold Bryant. He is a local mixed media artist and creative soul. He's also someone concerned with a lot of situations, a lot of suffering in society, and helps to document that type of suffering. We're welcome to have you, Harold. And, of course, we also have Professor Carlson. He's professor of psychology. And both Professor Carlson and Eric now will be talking about this special project. Harold, what is this project you're working on that's very important?
Hi, Hank. Well, it's called My Borthers Justice. It's a documentary. It's a true story. My mission as the filmmaker and documentary on this is to bring the story to the public. The story is basically a man in his early teens was accidentally shot and became a quadriplegic and depended on professional health care to survive. He had a good, strong family base that supported him, and for many years had a good relationship with a healthcare provider that would come in and take care of the quadriplegics. Quadriplegics require movement. They can't just lay still all the time. They require some of the things that we take for granted. And there came a time when this gentleman who was quadriplegic became injured from one of the nurses where the bandage was on him and the nurse just ripped the bandage off of him, tearing the skin off. And while he was at home, his brother learned of this and said, I can't depend on this type of care. So he installed closed-circuit television so he could monitor the nurses and the treatments. And the camera was out and exposed so that everybody could see it. They knew he would post bulletins underneath the camera for the nurses and the healthcare agency to see. And over a period of time, he became very ill in 2009 and was sent to the hospital and eventually passed away from an infection. The brother thought, Jesus, it's so strange that he just passed away so rapidly when he was in good health, and started reviewing his videotapes that he would tape chronologically from day to day, date them and time them, and started seeing some care when he looked at it with a closer eye that was just amazed him, and realized that his brother was being infected. Whether we can say that the healthcare person was doing this deliberately, that's a whole other story, and that's part of what I'm doing is in the research is to document this. So I have many, many hours of home videotapes of the care, records, and the brother, before he contacted me, tried to get the local agencies involved, local city attorney, then the state attorney. He had meetings with them in his home and meetings with them at their places of business and showed them videotapes and records and documents, and everybody agreed that something was certainly wrong and wanted to pursue it. But at the end, it kind of got whitewashed or swept under the carpet or just kind of blown away and said, no, we really don't have anything there. Yeah, we see some bad care, but yeah, that's about it. And the brother just wouldn't let it go. He can't, because of once I saw what I saw, I realized where he's at, and he couldn't let it go. In the meantime, this occurred in 2009 that his brother passed away. In the meantime, in 2009, the state attorney general, at the time was Como, started prosecuting 14 healthcare providers in a nursing home for the exact same causes that my client was bringing to them, who said they didn't have enough evidence. And I actually attended one of the trials last Friday Thursday or Friday, where they were doing some closing arguments on the case, and they were showing almost identical home videos that we have and presenting the exact same records that we have. And these are the same prosecutors. So it's very interesting that they took a similar case where the patient actually didn't pass away, but was just given some negligent care, compared to our case where he actually did pass away. So we have the coroner that was involved. We have a video, an audio recording of the conversation on the phone where he is absolutely denying some of the things that he was presented with. So we have some really interesting information that we just don't know why it's happening. And that's part of what I'm going to do in my documentary, is to hopefully expose some of that and then to the light of the public people and let them see and judge for themselves.
We definitely would like to be involved. And I have one question before Professor Carlson touches on something important and regarding the case, and that is, do you think that the particular case you're talking about, wasn't taken by Cuomo because his target was the nursing home, and so outside cases, even though they're the same, if not similar, if not more extreme, outside cases weren't within his purview? I mean, what do you think the situation there is, and has anyone contacted Cuomo on this?
Hank, we tossed that idea around, and it's very possible. We looked at a lot of things. The brother went to the news agencies, the local news agencies, and presented them with this information, and never even received a call back, never received an email back. No one would. It was like he didn't exist anymore. They just did not want to have any communication with him at all any farther. At one point, he got to where he was contacting the senator, the governor, all the way up the line, and would receive no communication back from them. It was just like pulling their hands of him. So yeah, is there something there? I'm sure there is. What is it? I don't know yet. We don't know.
Well, let's look at the other realm of it. The caregivers. All right. A lot of people know that. People that are nurses, people that are caregivers, actually, a lot of them have a heart where they want to care. That's why they're in the field. But are there some who are different? Professor Carlson?
Well, there's this phenomena that's discussed called angel of mercy or angel of death. And, most of us are also familiar with that, the Schenectady case of Mary Beth Tinning, who was a mother with all these children, and then they kept dying. And that's a different phenomena. It's called Munchausen by proxy or something, where, a person somehow garners attention because their child is sick. But, I would say the majority of healthcare workers are, have a strong moral compass. But certainly there are exceptions to that. And there are people that, they seemingly on the outside, their behavior is caring, they work there as a nurse or they're in a healthcare profession, but all of a sudden people under their care, and there's been, some extraordinary cases around this where people under their care are dying for unusual sets of circumstances. And one of the ideas or theories around why this happens is that some people have an ability to sort of suspend that moral compass. I mean, most of us, grow up with rules in society about what we're supposed to do, and certainly killing other people is something that most people learn early on. That's not a good thing, and that's against the law. So how do people justify doing that? And there is some research that seems to show that they're able to kind of close that door on those moral warning signs, and that allows them to reframe or re-perceive the situation as they're being, merciful, or their decision making is more proper, or this person, no longer needs to live. And that's kind of a frightening concept when you think about it, but that may very well be part of the explanation. What is your research, Harold, into this? I mean, the other thing I just want to ask you is this: such a difficult decision to put a loved one in the care of somebody else. And these cases, I think, frighten people even more about that. But in terms of your research, what have you discovered that might be psychological motivation behind people that may be involved in this behavior?
Well, in the research that I've done since January when I was contacted to do this, and before that I had no information, no background knowledge on this kind of care. But what I did see was there was a couple of issues that came up. One was financially. Does a healthcare provider benefit financially more if a patient is in the patient's own home, or do they benefit financially more if the patient is in the nursing home? So we have that to consider too. The other thing that we saw was the type of care that was being given as far as the quality, and if the person wasn't in the nursing home versus in their own home. Our brother and the patient himself were both adamant throughout the years that he was never going to go into a nursing home, because once he did that, they both felt that his lifespan would have been cut dramatically. He was in his late 50s when he passed away, and they feel that he probably would not have made it that far in a nursing home. Now, that's speculation, but that was part of the reason why they kept him at home and also installed a camera so they could monitor the nurses and the healthcare people when they came in, which probably helped him live a lot longer, knowing that. One of the things that I did was I started narrowing down a timeline for this gentleman before he passed away. And I saw that in a 14-month period, when the healthcare agency wanted the patient to have a different type of catheter installed. I don't mean to get graphic with this on air, but it's not a sexy story by any means. But they needed a different catheter installed on him. And the patient and the brother said, well, look, if you install this new catheter, he won't be able to be taken care of at home. He's going to have to go into a nursing home because that's out of your realm. And they said, no, we can do that. We'll take care of him still at home. So they reluctantly agreed, and as soon as they put the new catheter in, they said, look, sorry, we were wrong. We can't take care of him anymore. He has to go to a nursing home now. And that started a whole new thing involving lawyers and the healthcare agency and just a whole thing. And in the meantime, the patient was stuck in the hospital for several weeks while they debated where he was going to go. And they finally won and said the patient has the right to decide if he wants to be in a healthcare home or at home. So he won and got to stay at home. From that time to the time he died was 8 months after he won that battle. They argued, they fought over how this catheter was going to be installed, who was going to do it. They had to take him by ambulance from home back to the hospital to change his catheter when the nurses were capable of doing it. And they finally won again. They went to battle and won again where the nurses could change the catheter at home. The first time they did it, or the second time, they installed it wrong. He got an infection. They told him, the nurses, they had an infection, and they refused to believe it. They said, no, he doesn't have an infection. And they changed some medication on him, which they found was fraudulent on that. And he ended up going back into the hospital for the minor infection, which was a urinary tract infection. Well, they found out while he was in the hospital he had a host of infections. He got pneumonia while he was in the hospital and then passed away. And that was within an 8-month period of time. The brother was smart enough to demand an autopsy of his brother, which was very painful for him to do, but he had to do it. The autopsy came back and said that he died because he was a quadriplegic. We said, wait a second. And the secondary cause of death was pneumonia. Well, he caught pneumonia because he had to go to the hospital because he had an infection. And then the third cause of death was sepsis, which was a major infection throughout the blood and all kinds of things. So, and that was listed as third. So anyone looking at the thing would believe it. Yeah, he's an older man. He was a quadriplegic, and it was his time for him to go, and so he passed away. And that was basically how they wrote it off.
One question maybe that our listeners would have would be the idea that somebody can be a quadriplegic, but with good care, they can be alert, they can be cognizant, and they can be relatively healthy, even though they obviously are compromised in the things they can do. I think not everybody understands that. Can you just explain? I mean, he was a relatively healthy man during the period of his care, and then that really declined very, very rapidly, I believe.
It did, and it declined after they wanted him to go into a nursing home, which was very circumstantial too, very unusual. Yeah, he was a very active man. I have photographs of him with friends, and he had a headset where he could talk on the phone. He attended parties. He had girlfriends. He had birthday parties, and he went to weddings. He did normal things as best he could under his conditions. So, yeah, his health was good, and he was smart. He knew that he had to have certain he had to be moved. He knew these things, and that's what caused him to live so long. It wasn't just because of the proper care. It was because he was smart and knew how to be cared for. And that was kind of intimidating to some of these healthcare people. They didn't want to be told that he had to be moved every couple of hours or had to have things done, his legs positioned in a certain way. So, that's pretty tough. As far as the angel of mercy, one of the things that I saw with that in researching it is sometimes there's a thing of power, too, where they have this control where they can decide that it's time for someone to go, whether it is or not, and they can help move that along. And I tell you, when I was watching some of the videotapes, the actual videotapes of the healthcare provider, the nurse, wound care specialist, my first review of the videotape, I said, oh, my God, this girl she's an angel. Look at what she's doing. I could never do the things that they're doing as far, the cleaning of the patient and taking care of and the wound treatment and stuff. And then I watched it again, and then I realized, Jesus, the glove wasn't, the gloves aren't being changed. Wow, they're using cotton gauze and swabbing it and then putting the gauze on an exposed wound. That doesn't seem right.
Right.
Just superficial looking at it, the cursory review of it looks all proper. Looks like everything was done. The brother had a specialist consulting firm for nursing review them and wrote up and said to the Board of Professions that there were many, many, many instances where the health care was done improperly. So as far as an angel of mercy, that is not out of my realm of research here.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the word power, and certainly when a person is in a position where they can influence someone's health, that they're in a life and death situation, and most of people use that power judiciously, it's irreverent power. It's power to be able to heal. But, I guess it's a matter of any time that we do have that kind of power, and there's an immense responsibility. And sometimes people can cross that line, obviously, and misuse that kind of power. But it just also speaks to the fact that it's so important to have individualized care with people. You can't have a one-size-fits-all care, whether it's medical or psychological care. And it seems as though there's often a lot of resistance. People want to be at home with the people that they love when they're ill. They don't want to be in a hospital. I mean, that's necessary, but they don't want to be in a hospital.
Right.
If I could interject this, Harold, I have a question.
Sure.
Was any psychological care available for this gentleman?
Psychological care. I would imagine that there was, but I don't believe that it was. I don't believe there was any treatment for that at his time. I don't think it was needed. He was in good spirits. He was, as far as his attitude and mental faculties, he was just like anyone else, fairly normal. So I don't believe he had any psychological treatment, if that's what you're asking.
Right. Well, with that, I do want to mention I'm also honored. I received a phone call during the week for VOP Freedom Radio. And, Eric, I didn't get a chance to tell you about this, but somebody has a friend. They don't know anything about what Harold's working on. They had a friend or has a friend that's a quadriplegic, and they want to learn radio. So they'll be contacting me to show them how to do their own radio online. And I think that's a rather cool idea, right?
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah. So we'll be right back with Harold Bryant and Professor Carlson. And, of course, with us online is our special guest, Harold Bryant, who is working on a very special documentary regarding a local in the Capital District situation where caregiving may have led to the unjustified death, sudden death of someone who needed their care. Harold, you were talking about, I think in the past when we talked on the phone, about word that the state has hired some new investigators in situations like this. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just learned about it through another person that's locally that's fighting the state on another issue, but she brought up to me that the state, New York State, just hired 18 new investigators to research abuse to healthcare patients, and part of their research is to also investigate the reporters of the abuse. So not only will they be investigating the abuse that's been accused of, and also the person who's bringing that to surface, which in my mind would make me would deter me possibly from reporting something if I knew New York State investigators were going to investigate me, which is counterproductive, I think, to their case. But they spent $18 million, from what I heard, on this project, which if they would just devote some of that to some of the other issues at hand. It's where do you go when you do have a person that's being treated and you suspect something? Where do you go? That's part of my documentary too. Is what is the resources for somebody? How do you do it? In the case that I just went to in Troy, the family suspected something was wrong. They went to the Attorney General. The Attorney General hid a hidden camera in the nursing home and was able to document the care. But I don't think that's afforded to everybody. So that's tough. Where they go for that, and how do they do it? So, but that's part of what's exposed in my Borthers Justice, the documentary.
Sure.
Yeah, you know what's great about My Borthers Justice, and of course having you on, and is the networking of VOP Freedom Radio. Just in a matter of this show, an agreement has occurred between Professor Eric Carlson and Harold Bryant to actually collaborate on this project, and I think that's a great thing, Professor.
Absolutely. I mean, just again reminding our listeners, if they're just tuning in, or we're talking about a case in which someone's brother, who's a quadriplegic, was being treated at home, and he was doing well there. He was healthy, and seems like there's some controversy about the installation of a catheter and whether he had to go back to the nursing home, even though it was his desire to stay at home and be treated. I would imagine that it's in your research, it's confusing to people because there's so much medical technology that has advanced, and so maybe the providers are a little intimidating. But what should somebody do if they have an intuition? We tend to have intuitions that something isn't quite right. I mean, is there a particular protocol that's followed when someone starts to get really sick, or what would you recommend to people if they have these concerns?
Professor Carlson, the natural reaction, the first reaction is if they're being treated at home or in a nursing care, is to report their suspicion to that particular person's supervisor. In other words, to the healthcare agency or to the nursing home. And that may be the best thing to do at that moment, but does that mean it gets fixed? Or what I've seen is they take that particular nurse and they say, "Yep, you're right. We're gonna deal with that." And the next thing you know, they're not working on that patient anymore. But 2 doors down or in the next home, that same nurse is now working at the other place. Do they actually take action on it and follow through, or are they just passively satisfying that particular case at that moment?
I think, Harold, if I may interject this, that what this documentary, one of the goals of the documentary is to actually establish those protocols. I don't think protocols are actually established, and those that are established are of so low level that it's not reaching the goals. Like you were talking about investigators. Whenever you hire investigators, there should be 1 or 2 that work on cold cases, on any crime, on any suspicion of crime. Cold cases actually reveal a pattern to this kind of crime. And so I think protocols can actually be developed through campaigns using the documentary, putting pressure on politicians and other supporters. In cases like this, you got to understand, all of us are going to be in some incapacitated situation where we're going to need some kind of situation. Hopefully not myself. I hope I just, fall out from a heart attack. You know what I mean? But
we could all be there. You're right. Right.
Yeah, we're all going to be there. We're all going to have some family member be there. So this is something that should be solved today. And Harold, what is the goals of the documentary, and how far are you going to reach with this documentary?
I'm going to present the documentary in the same style and fashion of a Dateline investigation, where a narrator or host comes on and starts to educate the viewer about what's happening, and using real people and possibly some reenactments involved in it, just to augment the story of telling what's happening, not to slant it in any way, because I have real footage and real people involved in this. And the audience that I hope to reach is people like you just said. We all could potentially be in the same position, and there's probably hundreds of thousands of people that are in that position right now. Healthcare nursing homes are rising. They're not going away. They're building more of them as we talk. And some of us that we know could be there and being cared for by the healthcare agencies. That's where I'm headed with it. I've got a pretty good crew. I've got a girl that's working with me, an associate producer who used to be a district attorney in Brooklyn. I've got a girl who was a producer for many years with MSNBC, Ginny Hedden, who has produced and directed many of them. She's working with me on this project. It's going to be a real deal. It's going to be about an hour-long segment for television, and I'm going to reach out to everybody. I'm not just going to go local, because local had the opportunity, and they kind of snubbed my client a little bit. So we're going to go national with it. We're going to go PBS, the Fox News, everywhere that caters to helping the underdog.
Beautiful. Professor, this is a great opportunity as well for yourself to get some of your work out there and your interest. I know you love helping people, and this kind of like landed in your lap. Harold, when I was talking to the professor the other day about it, although he knows about these cases, he was in shock and right away said, I'd love to help in that case. This is great.
That's wonderful. I certainly appreciate the help, and my client would appreciate the help too.
Well, one of the things I think that comes to mind is that even though, we're in a little bit of a different era in terms of people being a little more responsible for their own wellness, their own health care, there still is that distance between the health care provider, the patient, and the family. I mean, when it's delivered correctly, there is a collaboration. People feel free to ask questions, and there isn't a sense of defensiveness. But, it seems to me sometimes when people are a little confused, they feel reluctant to ask questions. They always say, well, ask questions of your doctor when you go in for an appointment. Well, when you have like a minute and a half, to be seen by a doctor, it can be a very intimidating set of circumstances. It seems like part of, again, a lot of these things will bring out, I want you to comment on this, is that we have to be proactive about our health and the health of the people that we love. And we have to be encouraged to be proactive, that you're not being a troublemaker, but actually you're going to get a better outcome. Everyone's better off when we're proactive. So I'm assuming that's going to be a big piece of what you're going to be talking about in the film.
Oh, yeah. Well, the one thing with this particular case is the family of the patient was adamant that they wanted him with them also. And that's almost, everyone loves their family. Respectfully, but does every family, are they able to care for someone who is 100% dependent? Just about most families are so busy with two jobs or working, and they got kids and stuff, and which he did also. But in order to take care of his family, so he took the opposite side. He was very proactive. He was sort of in-your-face proactive with the nursing agency, which was kind of intimidating, which I mentioned earlier, because when you're challenging someone in a profession like that, they kind of stand back and say, look, we know what we're doing. You just be quiet and let us do our job. And that's not what he was allowing to happen. It was pretty remarkable.
Well,
now,
again,
I wanted to ask for the listeners, do you have or have you set up yet, and if you haven't, it's a great idea, like an email address where somebody could go to, even anonymously, who may have situations that are similar to this case that you're documenting? Do you have a contact?
Hank, I'm in the process of creating a blog right now. Eva Carafon, who is our associate producer, who was the assistant district attorney in Brooklyn, she's working on the blog as we speak so that people can do that. But they can certainly call me on my phone, 518-772-7211, and that would remain anonymous with anyone I spoke to if that's the way they wanted to go. And they can also email me at PoPMediaPro, PoPMediaPro @gmail.com, and say they want to remain anonymous, and I can either meet with them in person or talk to them on a phone or however. But I'm also in the process of putting a Craigslist advertisement for similar situation. If you have a family member that's a quadriplegic or that cannot care for themselves, and you have a nursing, so I'm in the process of working on that. But they can still contact me through those other means, and they can get more information at myBrothersJustice.com on the process or progress of the documentary too.
Well, as well, VOP Freedom Radio is going to give you constant air. We're going to work together on a special project regarding this project, and to keep the word going out and keep pushing this situation. We're behind you 100%, Harold, and of course it's an honor having you on the show. Do you have any shout outs you'd like to do before you go?
Hank, just anyone that's listening, if they have the similar situation, believe me, that someone in their family or someone else could be in the same situation, and we're working to prevent that from happening in the future and to bring light onto what's happening now. So my shout out is to the general public, and thanks for any help that they can give me.
Well, I think your story is really inspiring in terms of you using your creative talents to pursue a line of justice that the conventional system, it doesn't seem like that they have chosen to be able to right a wrong that may have occurred here. And that's just, as a citizen and as a creative filmmaker, it really frames the fact that, we all as citizens, have a responsibility for issues of justice. We can't just, sit back and believe that the conventional systems are going to take care of that. So I really applaud you, and I think it inspires other people to pursue the same kinds of areas.
Well, thank you, Professor Carson. And I just wanted to make one other comment that in my documentary and in my research on this, I am not condemning the medical field. It's like if you have a police officer that does something wrong, doesn't mean that the whole entire police department is bad, or a fireman that did something wrong. It's not the same thing. So the medical field I appreciate them, and so do everybody else. They do a remarkable job for us. They help us. They go above and beyond 24-hour care sometimes, and they are angels. But when it does come to this situation, that's when I turn the rock over and look underneath it.
Great. And with that, I want you to stay on a conference with the Professor Eric Carlson, and we're going to go to a song because this is a dream, doing this kind of documentary, and you have to know that dreams do come true with the pressure behind it, and if something is for justice, that is truth. And, of course, that's Harold Bryant from PoPMediaPro.com. Harold, it's an honor having you on.
Thank you, Hank. It was a pleasure.
You got it. Stay on conference with the professor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, brother. And here we are back at VOP Freedom Radio. And, of course, you can reach us on Facebook, VOP Freedom Radio. You just type that in at Facebook. Our email is VOPFreedomRadio@yahoo.com. And the schedule of our shows is at www.voicesofthepeople.us. And we just had a great guest on, Harold Bryant. And, of course, you can visit his website at PoPMediaPro.com. He's a professional photographer, a videographer, and a whole bunch of mixed media artist. The guy's a great guy. He's been working on some of the most popular things in the Capital District, and is well-connected, and this is a very important documentary he's working on. And I'm really proud of Professor Eric Carlson jumping on ship here with Harold Bryant. Professor, I salute you. Whoops.
I just think that we need. I mean, the situation he talked about was a very proactive family, but a lot of times dealing with healthcare issues is really intimidating. And I think most of the time the care that we get is generally really excellent. But I mean, the healthcare profession wants to improve what they're doing. And some of that comes about by getting good, honest feedback and having clear protocols and collaborating and individualizing treatment. These are all significant issues. And I think we probably have all been touched to some degree by some kind of medical mistake that was made. And we have to be able to be comfortable in being able to report those kinds of things and know they're going to be followed up on.
Yeah. The problem is while protocol, a lot of people have to suffer to develop protocol, and being involved in movements and revolutionary things throughout the past and throughout history in my entire lifetime, pretty much, you suffer a lot to fight for justice. You got to expect to suffer. Don't even worry about it. Just minimize what you need and get ready to fight. The thing is, as you're establishing protocol, Professor, as you start telling what's going on, the first response is defensiveness, and that's the problem. Protocol has to be established in such a way where it's just like reporting child abuse. Don't sit there and say, well, listen, if I'm a teacher, do I have to report? I mean, if I think it's happening, you know what I mean? If it's evidence you have to report, you have to report, and that's the law, and you could be charged if you don't report. The same kind of thing should be already established. I'm shocked. It should be established in cases like this rather than people fearing telling what's going on. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think when Harold was discussing the case, it was really clear that, they reported, or the tendency is to report something to somebody's supervisor. And you know what? There may actually be a strict protocol in place, but the issue is, how do we know that they have followed it? They may offer some reassuring words that they follow the protocol, but we, as a family or as a patient, we have a right to be able to actually see the documentation that they have gone through those steps. Because sometimes there's very clear protocol that's in place, but people don't follow the correct steps in that regard, and they need to be accountable for that. And that's really, really important. I know that when I was in the hospital, I was in the hospital a couple of years ago for an appendectomy, an emergency appendectomy, and my care was stellar. And they came in and explained everything. Every medication that was given was, there was kind of a scanning device that tracked everything that was happening. And the communication was really, really good, and that's important. And the family was very much involved in the process of communicating about how I was doing and my condition, and that makes all the difference in the world, is to involve the family in a positive way, and they need to know. They need to know about these situations. So I agree with you.